forbidden to drive, denied education, forced to wear burqas and veils, unequal rights, honor killings, segregation. These are some of the contentious issues that are often raised regarding Muslim women. But who are Muslim women? What does the religion Islam say about women? Does Islam give women rights? Does Islam treat women as equals? Does Islam provide for the full participation of women in society?
Most people have a lot of misperceptions about Islam. Issues about oppression of women, issues about men making all of the decisions in Islam, issues about, God being a different God than one might worship in Christianity. All those were issues I had to learn to be able to speak to as a new Muslim.
For many people, fleeting images and sensational headlines from the media have been their only source of information about Muslim women. The media often only portrays fragments of information and quick glimpses into the lives of Muslim women. So the question many of us ask is, what does the religion of Islam say about women? Before we begin to answer this question, let us first understand, what is Islam?
Islam to me means peace. Most people wouldn't guess that, but Islam means peace, and the concept of peace has a dual meaning. And in Arabic, which the word Islam comes from, Islam also means submission to God, completely submitting to God, which makes a person at peace. So it really matches well, peace and submission to God.
Women not voting, that's not Islam. Women not being taken care of in their family unit, that's not Islam. Women not being able to make choices or having access to inheritance, that's not Islam. Islam gave women more rights than any Western system ever created, especially for Americans here, the right to vote. When were we able to vote? Women in Islam were voting back in the 600s. I think we have a lot to learn from a different system.
Islam teaches human beings that men and women are accountable for their own lives. As individuals, we answer only to God, as it is God that we worship and to whom we submit.
Allah is the God of Abraham. In Arabic, when you want to say God, you say Allah. God and Allah represent the same being. And we don't worship Allah and other people worship God. We worship the same Creator.
Allah is the Arabic name for God, the one and only God that Jews, Christians, and all monotheistic faiths worship. As we now better understand the true meaning of Islam, we must make a crucial distinction: the distinction between Islam and Muslims. Islam, the religion, lays out clear parameters for its followers. Unfortunately, followers of Islam, Muslims, do not always follow those tenets.
I always think to myself that I'm glad that I learned Islam and from the Qur'an and the holy books. I'm glad that I didn't learn Islam from the Muslims, because the example that Muslims show isn't always the example that Islam teaches. And there's not a better example of that than with the situation of women's rights and how women are treated in many countries. For example, the Taliban treated women very badly and said, no, women shall not be educated. That was a horrible circumstance. Women are supposed to be educated in Islam, and the Taliban was teaching absolutely the opposite of Islamic teachings. So they were using Islam, hiding behind Islam, to sort of forward their political agenda.
Islam clearly forbids injustice and violence, yet many people who call themselves Muslims disobey the teachings and spirit of Islam. Some Muslim women suffer greatly from acts of injustice that are direct violations of Islam's teachings. The way Islam is practiced varies greatly among Muslims as well as throughout history. As we continue to explore the treatment of women in Islam, we will focus on the tenets of Islam, the religion, and how it gives women rights and protects those rights. To truly appreciate how Islam liberated women and protects their rights, we must first understand the bleak circumstances in which Islam was formed. Islam was formed as a result of the prophethood of Muhammad.
The Prophet Muhammad was surrounded by women all of his life, and women were extremely important to him at every stage of his life. He loved women, he respected women, he held them in great esteem, and he relied on their counsel.
Muhammad was born in the year 570 into a society that gave women no rights. This pre-Islamic society viewed women as property to be inherited, bought, sold, or simply disposed of as men saw fit. Muhammad came at a time when daughters were considered evil, and fathers would bury their infant daughters alive out of shame and guilt. Muhammad and the teachings of Islam changed all of that.
Islam began, it said, in the arms of a woman. Because when the revelation first came to the prophet, when the angel Gabriel first came to the prophet, he didn't want to be a prophet. He didn't ask to be a prophet. And he was overwhelmed by the revelation that his wife Khadija took him and she sheltered him and she covered him and she told him not to fear and she strengthened him and she always stood by him for those first 10 years until she passed away.
Khadija was 15 years older than Muhammad and a widow when she broke with tradition and chose to propose to him. Muhammad accepted her proposal and married her. Khadija became his love, his best friend, his financial and business manager, and closest advisor. The example of the loving and respectful relationship between Muhammad and Khadija provides Muslim women with a positive role model, a confident, intelligent, loving, and most of all, pious woman.
In terms of looking up to women as role models, as wives, as independent women, in many different ways, I think one of the women I look up to is Khadija, the wife of the Prophet. Again and again, I see her as an independent woman, a wealthy woman, a woman who had brains and beauty, and she was just graceful and good and kind, and I think what a great example.
Muslim women have a number of role models to choose from. At a time when Europe was still debating whether a woman had a soul or not, Muslim women throughout the Islamic Empire were excelling in all fields as scholars, builders, scientists, and patrons of art and culture.
As a Muslim, I have no limits, and I'm very proud to hold this position and to try to provide understanding for my community and let people know that who we are and understand us a little better. We're just like everybody else. I think under Islamic traditions and Muslim beliefs that women are allowed to be political in public. I think that it dates back to the days of the Prophet. Women spoke their minds and they were asked to come forth and give their opinions, and I think today women are still doing the same thing.
The rights and equal status given to women by Muhammad resulted in an unprecedented growth in the contributions of women in society.
Women do have the right to own property and to earn a living in Islam. Those were rights that were given to women over 1400 years ago, where it was unheard of in the West.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave women that opportunity to be active politically. He gave them rights through God's command.
In contemporary terms, we would call Prophet Muhammad a dedicated women's rights advocate. When he migrated to the city of Medina, Muhammad established the first Muslim city-state and ensured that all its citizens had equal rights, regardless of their gender.
The marketplace in Medina, the city of the Prophet, was sometimes under the direction of a woman. Even in the days of the Caliphate, the rule that came after the Prophet, marketplaces were sometimes put under the authorization and the direction of women, which not only tells you the importance of women, but it also shows you that there were lots of women in the marketplace.
Islam honors many women, and the Qur'an reveres one woman in particular. Muslim women look up to Mary, the mother of Jesus, as a great role model, a symbol of piety, of submission to God, of chastity and purity. Significantly, a chapter of the Muslims' holy book, the Qur'an, is named after Mary. The Qur'an speaks of Mary in the following terms.
The angel said, O Mary, God has chosen you and purified you and chosen you above all the women of all nations. O Mary, God gives you good news of a word from him whose name is the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, honored in this world and in the hereafter, and one of those brought near to God. He shall speak to the people in infancy and in old age, and shall be of the righteous. She said, O my Lord, how shall I have a son when no man has touched me? He said, even so, God creates what he wills. When he decrees a thing, he says to it, be, and it is.
Mary's story is an empowering example for Muslim women. She was a woman devoted to God who had to strive against great difficulties in order to carry out the great responsibility God assigned her with. It is this strength of character in Mary that is admired by Muslim women, as well as her piety and modesty. In fact, if you will notice, the Virgin Mary is always depicted in modest attire with her hair covered with a scarf or piece of fabric, what a